Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Libraries Open podcast, where we discuss everything from technology trends in the library to community and the tools we use every day with librarians in our world. I'm your host, Jessie Zarrow, along with Nate Karula, and today's guest we have Michael Kucsak from Virginia Tech. Welcome.
Thank you.
So, Michael, tell us a little bit about yourself. Give us your background.
Well, I'm right now the Assistant Dean and Chief of Staff at Virginia Tech University Libraries. I've been here for about 2 years. Prior to that, I spent about 10 years at the University of North Florida. My background has been overwhelmingly library technology systems. I started my career as a systems librarian type position, information systems coordinator for a nonprofit multi-type cooperative in Florida, but I've been in the K-12 environment, public libraries, worked in corporate library, and then finally I've seemed to have landed for a while in academia. Covered a lot of different library bases.
That's great. We'd love to hear a little bit about the situation at Virginia Tech and what prompted you to consider and eventually move over to an open source solution such as Koha.
All right. Well, yeah, it's an interesting story. As I came in 2 years ago in March, actually, it was on our radar to investigate the next step for library automation systems. And I think we were looking originally at some of the larger proprietary systems. And having come from a different environment, I had experienced some customer feedback, actually, specifically about ByWater and Koha. I think I learned about Koha at the University of North Florida about 12 years ago and was very interested in its capabilities. Looked into it more deeply when we started talking collectively about Qualiolet, and saw a lot of potential in Koha. Its ability to, at bare minimum, meet the needs of libraries, and its flexibility to grow to meet really whatever wants we might have. Sometime later, I think at a conference, Florida Library Association conference, I was introduced to ByWater, not formally, but through a conference presentation with some of ByWater's customers, who were just all smiles and joy about how happy they were with their new system and their new migration and working with ByWater. And that was a little different experience for me because I'm really more accustomed to hearing people complaining about their library system than I am hearing great and wonderful things. So 10, 12 years ago is when I was introduced to ByWater and Koha, and I've kept an eye on them ever since. So as we began looking at systems here, and I saw what we were looking at, asked our folks to take a look and invite ByWater to present and share what we were capable of doing. And when y'all came out, it was very apparent that there was going to be something very different about the ByWater Koha option. And it was the focus on customer service, the flexibility, the ability to really kind of evolve the system as we might want to, and the freedom to really work with other systems as we chose to, was really appealing to us. One of my passions is discovery. I'm a big fan of discovery, at least in concept. In practice, I've been a part of great successes, but I've also seen the opportunity to improve. And I've seen a lot of improvement in the last 5, 6, 7 years in discovery, but I think there's room for more. And the reason that's important is because as it evolves, our choice in discovery tools can change. We choose the best tool for the job. And one thing that was very important about working with Koha and with ByWater was the freedom to choose and not be locked in to any one particular system. One thing that I personally found very exciting, and I've been crusading about the library, is the well, I was introduced to the crowdsource method of evolving Koha, and absolutely love that. And Virginia Tech has well, more resources than I'm accustomed to in most of the libraries that I've been in. We have some great talent, and we have some developers, and certainly we can do things on our own, but we don't necessarily have the very specific expertise around this system. So having a developer isn't necessarily enough. It's having dedicated and specific expertise in a tool is really important. But that crowdsourcing piece brings something else that I think is really important, and it's perspective of other libraries. I think a lot of things that Virginia Tech does, we do very well, but there's nothing wrong with seeing a perspective of other types of libraries. How do they deal with patrons? How do they use systems? How do they interact? And I think there's great potential for us to learn. And at the same time, hopefully we can share and contribute. I think there's a lot of us who can benefit by collaborating, by sharing our knowledge, working together, and identifying some potential improvements or change. And that's very exciting to me. It's something that I really can't wait to see how this evolves over the next year or so.
Being part of the community alone is one of the biggest attributes, in my opinion, of being able to talk with other people out there and see what you're doing, and then sharing with others what you're doing. That's one of my passions. That's why I love Koha so much. Just being able to share that information.
It's great. I want to say that it's more than just being able to share and work together, though. It's the reasonable expectation that what we want can actually come to fruition. I have a lot of experience with proprietary software. Let's not limit it to the library world. When's the last time you had a major software vendor, a tool that you used, and you said, I wish it did this, with the reasonable expectation of actually seeing it happen? There may be some things in Microsoft Excel or the iOS or anything like that, but how loud is my voice? How much power do I have to see a change? Here, I believe we really have the power to make the change. We really have the power to be heard and to make a difference. That's what's exciting.
And another great part of that is that all of the contributions you make benefit every other person who uses this software.
Absolutely, and those contributions they make benefit us. It has the potential for exponential growth of goodness, I think. And if we join in with this community and lend our weight, we all benefit. It's a positive for everybody, and hopefully we can lead the way for other people to join and lend their weight and work with us as well. But at the same time, I'm still very excited about what we see within the system as it stands today. There's still a lot of freedom and flexibility and capability in the system. We certainly expect to have several of our processes automated and improved over what we're doing right now, and that's important to us. So it's not just about the future, We expect in the next 6 months for our lives to be easier.
Awesome. All right, Michael, tell us a little bit about the evaluation process and how staff, provided feedback and kind of how we got to the outcome of choosing Koha as your next LSP.
We took very literally the concept of a business requirement. And I say that because not everybody has the same approach when it comes to business requirements. When you say business requirement, it means absolute, without a doubt, this is what we must have to accomplish the work that we do. And we started there. And what you can do is you can go from hundreds, if not thousands, of so-called business requirements to a much smaller number. This is what we have to accomplish. And then this is what we want to accomplish. And without a doubt, really every system that we looked at is capable of doing what we must do. Then it really became more of an issue of, what do we want to do, and what is it worth to us? Putting things in a balance, I would say. And some of the wants that we had, we realized might have been almost contradictory. We were looking for sometimes features that would make our lives easier, but those features sometimes some of the vendors would offer it to us, but under a certain set of circumstances. As I mentioned before, the discovery tool. So we might have great potential improvement for workflows over our existing system, but if we chose the discovery tool that we end up choosing, all of those efficiencies go away. And that sort of dose of reality was very important in our decision-making process. And so, well, wait, it sounded great until you start to try to put it in practice, and then it's not so great anymore. Then it's just kind of a cool idea that you can't realize. So it began there. Well, even actually before that, I would say the first step was to invite vendors out, because Virginia Tech is has a somewhat unique history in the development of ETLS long ago, and the migration to our current innovative system. We, in our history, only have experience with 2 systems. And so there's not much in the way of experience for shopping for new systems, or implementing, or even identifying. So having everybody come out and just talk to us, and instead of saying, tell us about this, or tell us what you have, tell us what you can do, because maybe we don't know. Maybe we're not all up to date on that. And that was very important, I think, to us. That was the opportunity where I spoke earlier about some of the things I'm excited about. We just didn't know. We didn't know to ask for certain things. We didn't know to say, yeah, this is really important, or this is really wonderful. So leaving that wide open opportunity for vendors to come in and talk to us and just give us the what can you do. As we boiled things down, I think that you go back to the freedom and flexibility being the number one thing. Why? Because we can do what we want with the system, as opposed to having to do something that the vendor wants. We're not really big fans of a tie-in. We are very heavily invested in open source. I think we're very enthusiastic about open source, but we didn't choose it because it was open source. We really chose it because of what Koha can do for us. We'll choose open source when it's the best tool, or we'll choose a proprietary system when it's the best tool. and in this case, we have the advantage of an open source system that is the best tool, that gives us flexibility. This is the best tool today, gives us the best flexibility for tomorrow. But then also there is the belief, based on working with ByWater, based on talking to previous customers, of a very customer service focused entity. Sometimes, I won't name names, but sometimes when you have a service contract with a vendor for any given software, you might ask yourself, what is it I'm paying for here? Am I paying for the right to use the product? Am I paying for support? Am I paying for, and it seems like sometimes you're paying because it's almost an obligation. You're paying for it just so somebody will pick up the phone. But we believe that ByWater is really going to be there to help us make the most out of this system. And that belief was very, very important in the decision-making process. And some of the experiences we had, really even prior to contract negotiation, prior to making that decision, were some sort of anonymous calls that we would make to ByWater, and just not to be deceptive, but just out of curiosity, how do things work? And the level of customer service that we received as non-customers, I think, surpassed the level of customer service I'm accustomed to most anywhere else. That was a huge, huge selling point.
Awesome. I love how you talk about flexibility, because especially now in the ILS, LSP, LMS market, there's so much consolidation and so many libraries going to kind of like a putting all of your eggs in one basket solution, that I personally think is much more risky than diversifying your technology solutions and using different vendors for different things. You have more of a voice in that situation, more power, in my opinion. So it's very refreshing to hear that.
Well, to use your analogy of putting all your eggs in one basket, it really only takes one rotten egg to ruin the basket. And an ILS migration is a non-trivial effort and a non-trivial expense. So the concept of having our basket ruined by one egg has some serious ramifications. We feel that Virginia Tech is in a position of great flexibility. We can be very agile right now. We can pick and choose our ILS. We can pick and choose our discovery tool. We can pick and choose our e-resource management system, for example. And we can do so without disrupting everything else we do. And that's really important to us as well. Right now, we feel like we have chosen well on all fronts, and we're looking forward to that. But we can go into this without fear of, well, if 2 out of 3 are great, but 1 isn't, what's going to happen? No, we're moving forward with great confidence right now.
Excellent. So, with my experience, at least, change is somewhat of a difficult pill to swallow, especially when it comes to technology, especially when it comes to major technology solutions in a library. How is it that you went about managing the change with your team and kind of bringing everybody on board so that you had buy-in for this decision? Because, as I'm sure you know, you are the first of your kind to make this step towards, Koha, and maybe even, well, not open source. Olay had some early adopters and things like that, but Koha specifically, how did you manage that change with your team?
Well, so one of that was certainly a challenge. I think one of the concerns was, well, are we, if we're the first, it's who else is doing this? Wanting to see somebody else having paved the way for us. And that was a challenge. The initial approach was to try to show people that regardless of the fact that we might be the first research institution, for example, doing this, that ByWater and Koha has some very big customers. Virginia Tech circulated about 100,000 items last year. I believe you have a consortium that circulated about 2.1 million items.
Several.
So, it becomes, it's an easier pitch when you can say, look, they can handle 20 times the business we're going to bring to them. When it's all said and done, our responsibility is to our patron. Can we get patrons in the system? Can we check out books to the patrons? They're the ones that we need to be worried about most. And the answer is a clear and indisputable yes, absolutely. That's been proven. It's been proven for years in multiple cases. So it begins there. And then it moves into, what ByWater did for us is setting up a test system and letting people go in and experience the system and experience it with your staff of people just ready on call, to respond to questions. But I think that that really the epiphany, which was not mine, I wish it had been. For all the years I've been doing this, I should have thought of this before. Was bringing ByWater down to do training, even in advance of the contract, is to have you come down with all of the implementation folks from all of the different libraries and all of the different areas, and spend time learning the system and seeing, yes, it can do everything we need it to do, and also hearing. When I think one of your developers was down for part of the training, for the training as well, and hearing, well, can we do this? And the answer being, yes, we can do this. And here's how. So, words are one thing, but the hands-on experience with the faculty and the staff, being able to play with it for themselves and see that how it works and that it can work. Was really the groundbreaker for us. And, we knew we wanted to go with ByWater and Koha. We were working in that direction. But, I would actually suggest, you're going to train your folks anyway. So go ahead and take that step forward and invest in having the training done early on and see for yourself. And I'll reference a conversation I was having just a few minutes ago that it might have been beneficial for some other libraries to maybe do a little training in advance before they've done a deal. Because other libraries have learned that the ILS they've chosen isn't all it's cracked up to be, or isn't capable of doing the things that they want to do. If only they had tried it out first, so to speak. And that was something, and I guess I'll give you guys credit. Your training is very good. Your folks are very approachable, and your training prices are quite reasonable, and it makes it very easy to do something like that. I have seen training estimates from other vendors that would not have made that possible. There's no way we could have justified the expense of training based on some of the quotes that we received in advance of having a signed contract. So another advantage.
We feel as though the more educated our customers are, the easier our job is. So we try and keep those costs as low as possible so they take advantage of them. If we benefit, then we're not going to try and squeeze every penny out of you,
Well, it's good to know we all benefit from that, because that was definitely a big win.
Excellent.
And a big watershed moment for us.
Thank you.
Michael, how has the communication process been, throughout the period from, going through the selection process to where you are now? Sometimes balls drop, people miss things, and, it's hard to keep that flow going. What has your team done to, keep that communication strong throughout the process?
We have a dedicated project manager, who's responsible for keeping things going. His name's Bob Pillow. He actually has many years of experience working for an ILS vendor, so he has a lot of insight as to what's going on. And it's been his role to really keep everybody together. He's not he's not really going to be an ILS user, but that's not really important. What's important is that we have somebody who is the key point of contact, who can know what needs to be done, and know it's his responsibility is essentially communication within the library.
Yeah.
Making sure that everybody who has a stake in the ILS is either on the team or is communicated by people on the team, and that's been vital. That's been absolutely vital to keeping this going. Now, beyond that, we're starting to work on external communications. Our strategic communicators are looking at what we're doing, and they're saying, this is worthy of communicating. That you see, the library is taking a leadership role. The library is contributing to a critical element of the library world, and we need to talk about that and share that. So I think you'll start seeing some communication happening externally as well, fairly soon. But having somebody responsible, one person that you can point to has been.
Yeah, Bob's been great to work with. He's definitely helped the transition a lot.
Yeah, I think so. Good to hear.
So what's next?
What's next for us?
Yeah.
Well, we're scheduled to go live on May 15th. That's our time. That gives us plenty of breathing room for the end of the fiscal year. We're doing a lot of work right now mapping out our content, working on cleaning up our end of the database so that we have a nice pristine Koha when we get started. And really at the period between spring and summer is when we'll go live on this. And then, well, we're already looking very closely at our processes. And I think that's important. When you have a library that's been doing things the same way for decades, it's a good time to look at how things are working. And that's a lot of what's happening right now. But we have a growing list of potential projects that I think we're going to want to partner with ByWater on. And we've been talking a little bit about our offsite facilities. That Virginia Tech is maybe a little different from the norm in that a lot of other research libraries' offsite facilities are where books go to, well, spend eternity, or materials, I should say. But here it's a little more of a living collection. And we're very interested in working with ByWater to see if there's something we can do to automate that kind of process and embed that with the ILS. I hear that our folks are really taking to Coral, which ByWater is hosting for us and helping us doing training and implementation on that as well. And that's a step for us as well. We haven't really had a robust e-resource management system that we've used in the past. And so there's going to be a lot to learn there. We're implementing a new discovery tool and looking very closely at the Koha plugin. We're choosing EBSCO EDS, and that Koha plugin presents to us some interesting options as far as delivering content to our patrons. We have a hard line between physical and electronic. Physical goes into the ILS, and electronic does not. But this, and generally speaking, we're comfortable with that philosophy, but it's not a perfect philosophy, and sometimes our patrons want to see things a little differently. And I think that plugin might give us the opportunity to bridge those two worlds and make that philosophy a little less rigid. So we're already thinking ahead to the kinds of things that, well, for years we've been saying, I wish we could do this, and making a list and going to ByWater and saying, hey guys, we wish we could do this, and what will it take to make that happen? Really looking forward to that. And I think that's going to be, I think that's going to be a time where a lot of people at Virginia Tech are going to start being very happy with the system when they see, not only when we implement it that we've made some improvements, but now that we see some changes, we can make them. So those are some of the next on the list for Virginia Tech in the library automation and discovery world.
That's awesome. And, we'd love to have you back after you've been live for a while and get an update as well,
Love to be back.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, Michael, thank you so much for taking time to talk with Nate and I for our podcast, The Library is Open. We enjoyed hearing your perspective of, how things went from the, selection to evaluation process and, to where we are today here beginning the migration. So we look forward to joining you again and talking a little more about how the go live process goes and getting everything settled. So thanks again and have a great rest of the day, and we'll see everybody next time for The Library is Open.
Well, thank you. It was a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.